Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jeff Seymour, a curator and historian at the National Civil War Naval Museum, and welcome again to another edition of Curator's Corner. For this episode, I wanted to bring out a single stick. This is what sailors practice their cutlass drill with. Now, sailors are cross-trained on a number of different weapons, but if every scenario plays out and they run out of bullets in their weapons and so forth, there's always that backup weapon of the cutlass. Now, the single stick is designed for practice. For centuries, you would hear of practice swords called beaters. In the Navy, started referring to them as single sticks. By the time of the American Civil War, single stick drill, cutlass drill, was refined French fencing practice. And contrary to what Hollywood would have you believe about some of the fancy maneuvers in cutlass drill, it's not really fancy at all. It's very simple and actually designed to keep most of it by wrist movement in front of the body. The sailor would turn their body so you have as small a target as possible and present the single stick, ultimately the cutlass, toward your opponent. And largely with wrist movements, most of your offensive and defensive moves can simply be done by turning the wrist. Too much fancy stuff gets overcomplicated for the sailor. You got to remember, not everyone is bright enough, athletic enough to pull off all those fancy moves. So you want to make sure that the basics are there for an individual to protect themselves. So everything is kept very simple. And then we add on to the fact that a metal cutlass, it gets to weighing a good bit after a few minutes of wielding that. So everything is done as simple as possible. Now, the single stick is used in practice drill. And there are stories, in fact, there are a few pictures out there available of sailors on the deck practicing their cutlass drill with single sticks. This particular one is pretty typical. It's made out of an extra piece of wood laying around. It's been turned into a rather circular pattern. It's been smoothed out, and you have a leather piece here representing the brass cover that you would find on a real cutlass. So it is lighter, but it's also designed to keep the sailors from injuring their shipmates while they are practicing their cutlass drill. And ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those things that you really don't think about, but on a pretty much daily basis, the sailors are out doing something training-wise. And at least once a week, probably more, but depending on the captain of the vessel, the sailors would be out doing their cutlass drill. So many of these do not survive from the time of the Civil War, and we're fortunate to have one right here in our collection. So ladies and gentlemen, here's an example of something a sailor would use on a regular basis. We don't think about practicing their cutlass in order to defend themselves and their shipmates aboard their ship. So ladies and gentlemen, again, one of those stories that you'll hear nowhere else. Come and visit us here at the National Civil War Naval Museum.